Today, we're fortunate to have Michael Tucker, who's head of the Long Island Food Council. Called Long Island is a bit of a misnomer here because the Food Council has a very large footprint around the New York metropolitan area and beyond. So it's great to have him here today. Today is the next in our presentations on what's new. Today, what's new in the food and beverage industry. So Michael, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'd like to start off with sort of an obvious question. COVID has had an impact through all industries and markets. Can you tell us a little bit about how it's impacted the food industry? And if you could touch upon how it's impacted manufacturers versus retail, that would be helpful.
So what's interesting with COVID is that where before the manufacturing and the retail were like synonymous in the path of growth, now through COVID, the manufacturing has exceeded all bounds, and they've really, the production levels have increased. They're looking for additional manufacturing, all due to the delivery, the store delivery, the big box, and actually direct to consumer delivery, whereas the retailers, because of the COVID restrictions, have suffered greatly. And this is all parts of retail. So the restaurants, you're seeing some of the stores, the local markets have actually suffered in the beginning. The local markets have done a better job of pivoting, and they're able to service the clients. But you're really seeing a great divide, is what they're calling it now, between the retail sector and the manufacturing sector. And that really has to do with the consumer and what their confidence is.
Right. So you're talking in terms of pivoting. Tell us a little bit about how some of these companies have pivoted, especially small companies. I mean, it seems to be more difficult for a small company to pivot than a larger one, but talk to us a little bit about that.
So what we're seeing is more creative the companies are, and the ability to be able to stay in business, which is really, whether it's social media, whether they've pivoted to store pickup, outside pickup. We have seen some great partnerships, especially in Patchogue and different areas where a distillery would have pivoted from making whiskey into hand sanitizer. And then what they ended up doing was working with the local restaurants and then music. And they've combined things virtually to get through COVID and then have a central pickup point. It's been great for everybody in the business as far as keeping the business going, because it's important to keep this throughout. As we come out the other side, that people have the confidence that you've been in business. We've seen some others that have actually working with other avenues, working with local delivery companies. Really, the idea is to have to constantly pivot and to be known out in the marketplace and that you're in business. The ones that have kind of gotten nervous and haven't really made a presentation, and hasn't really shown that, they're working and trying to stay out there, are the ones I feel are going to be in trouble going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, some companies have pivoted. I mean, do you think they're going to pivot back? That they're sort of waiting for this wave to end, and then they're going to go back to business as usual? Or do you think that these changes are, more enduring than just through this COVID time?
So that's an interesting question. I think it kind of even goes more onto, it continually goes back to that confidence question. So if you are a retail, like the restaurants, are they going to be pivoting? No, they're going to be opening their doors. They may still with the delivery, but if the consumer confidence comes back and people are willing to go into the restaurants, then they'll probably need their services. They'll need their staff. They'll need everybody to work on the actual serving of the restaurant patrons. As far as the food manufacturers, they're going to have to do both. You're going to have to try to get out there. You're going to have to try to deliver to the store, to see the retailers, but you're also going to have to keep your online presence going, because we're still a ways from people actually saying, I'm going to go in, I want to touch and feel. There's a lot of pent up demand, yes, to get out into the marketplace, but there's still a lot of people that don't want to get out and they're still nervous about getting out. And as long as that happens, you're really going to have to keep multi-channels available, and you're going to have to learn how to work in both worlds.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier. I think that, to some extent, I think the world was heading in this direction already in many ways. And maybe, COVID and this experience has accelerated that. What are your thoughts on that? Was this where we're going anyway? It's just happening more quickly now?
Yeah, no, we were definitely heading in some kind of new world with Amazon and delivery and home and people, but now it definitely accelerated. Working at home, delivering at home. There's, I guess the best of things is people who love to cook have enjoyed this time, as you and I discussed, because this is great. Oh, you stay home and you can cook as much as you want and get the products delivered. But then if you look at what really is going on, especially, you see the senior citizens that can't get on with COVID. They don't know how to use the computer. So we're not out of, you can't just give up one for the other. That's too far of a pendulum switch. You really do need some kind of balance. You still have a place and people and a generation that's not going to just want everything delivered to their door. So you want, and then you're also going to have people, younger people that want to get out, socialize, do things, meet people. We can't do everything on just the computer. So I think I think the pendulum has definitely moved, and hopefully it's not gone too far in the other way, and that we can recover with the in-person, development.
Right. I think the retail is more obvious to people. They could see that there needs to be an emphasis on, delivering food to home, and because, restaurants, for example, need to have the ability to serve people because they're always going to need to be able to serve people. But they need to be able to deliver food to people's homes too, and that was already happening. That will no doubt continue. The same thing in manufacturing. Do you think manufacturers are trying to figure out ways to to pivot in the direction of, more direct to consumer type model?
Well, I think some tried. I think some of the delivery people that I've talked to, produce delivery people have tried to do during COVID to be able to deliver it. It's just not that easy. If you're a real manufacturer, your bottom line number is maximizing your production and distribution. If you have to do one-offs and it's a whole different network, it takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of money to make sure you do it correctly. What I see with manufacturers that are really successful is they're partnering with delivery companies that could do it. So their business is increasing because the actual delivery service company is increasing their business. So I see more manufacturing companies growing so they can distribute, in larger quantities to, people that actually distribute to the consumer. So it's opened up a whole new market of companies that are out there trying to figure out the best way to deliver to consumers. But the best thing to do is to stick with what you do best, and manufacturing is best manufacturing. Retail is best at retail. Some have kind of bridged the gap, but it's really difficult.
Yeah, we hear a lot about these programs, various relief bills that have passed. It seemed to me that the ones that were passed last year didn't really help the restaurants in any sort of granular way, right? Then a lot of them had to close, PPP loans or other things. With the new bill passing, do you think that provides some additional opportunities to the types of enterprises that seem to need the most help now?
Well, I think for the restaurants, absolutely. There's a bill specifically targeted to restaurants, and there's money out there for restaurants currently through, I think, believe Fuse Hub, the MEP system. And so there is restaurant grants, but all this is going to matter about whether the consumer comes back. These grants and all these reliefs and all these, withholdings or eviction withholdings is really a matter of time. So if the consumer comes back and the businesses can sustain throughout this, that's great. All these things are stopgaps to keep them in business. So we go back to what did they do during COVID to make sure their presence was known? I've been out to a couple of places we go to consistently, and we stick with the ones we go to, and I know they're around, and that's really how we kind of felt comfortable with it. And then now, as we come out on the other side, we'll be going back to them. They're open, and things are happening. So I think that has a lot to do with it still.
Yeah, you've used the phrase consumer confidence a whole bunch of times already. Talk to us a little about consumer confidence. Where it's at, where to brush off your crystal ball. Where do you think it's going? But also like the impact of consumer confidence on various segments of the food and beverage industry.
So everything you're seeing, and even now that we just went to 75% and the city went to 50%, we're all seeing the same news articles where they interview two people and one says they can't wait to get back out there, and the second one says, I'm not ready yet. So it's going to take a lot of real building confidence, not just wanting to get out there. You're going to see a lot more outdoor dining. We're going to see it anyway because it's getting nicer now. It's the first day, spring's here. So now it's time for this to happen. I think it's perfect timing. It's just going to take a while. I think it's a 50-50 game at the moment. I just don't think there's enough people to say, we're all going out tomorrow and we're going to go to a big event. I mean, there's still hesitation towards the big events.
Right. Probably the fact that they are limiting capacity, sort of sends a signal in its own right to people that people are concerned about what's going out there and the risk of infection. So the fact that you are limiting things does, I think, sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. Fewer people are going to want to go out because they're been told basically you need to be concerned enough to not sit too close to the people sitting next to you.
Well, look at the ball fields. They're saying, what, 4,000 people in Yankee Stadium or some number, and then you have to, if you've got a vaccination, okay, or if you got a 24-hour COVID test. So there's still that hesitation for people. We're still not saying it's done, finished, let's all go out. I am seeing some companies, even companies going back to their offices. I mean, this is all just not a single entity, consumer confidence thing. It's if your office is telling you don't have to come back, then you're like, well, if I don't have to come back because I can't go to the office, should I be going out to dine? Should I be going out and doing these other things? So it's really all part and parcel of the story, being presented out there. And as confidence goes and the numbers stay low and we start growing and people get out, I think we'll get there. I think by summer's end, I think you'll see a lot of confidence and a lot more. The real question is whether all of the retailers can survive through this time. Once the PPP money's done, once the Restaurant, Recovery Act is done, once all the money's coming in and it's now finished, can they survive when business is going to be at what level it's going to be at?
Yeah, certainly in the New York metro area, with the weather getting warmer and the availability of outdoor dining being an option, because it really has not been for the last 4 months. Restaurants have been able to survive up to this point, have some reason for optimism. But some of them are kind of on fumes here, and they still need to be able to generate enough traffic to pay the rents, right? I mean, we talk about rents. I mean, there's been rent relief, but that seems to be winding down. So it's a bit of a confluence of positive and negative factors. You don't really know where it's gonna intersect.
But I am seeing a lot more people because I do real estate, and the market. I'm seeing more people asking questions about opening restaurants. So at least the positivity is there, people seeing the other side of it. It's what are we going to do with the existing restaurants, with the existing leases, and will they be able to work through this to be able to stay open through the summer as things do open up, and as we get to have more patrons come in. So it's going to be an issue. Look, the supermarkets are able to figure out how to do, pull up to the door and they deliver to your car. People have been able to pivot in all sorts of ways. We've seen a lot of companies that working together to get their product out there. Farmers markets are still good, but people have to be coming to the farmers markets. These are how companies are staying relevant into the market.
Right. In fact, some companies have flourished
Yes.
in this environment. Can you tell us a little bit about where you see companies really doing extremely well because of this environment?
Well, on the startups, I mean, some of the companies that were able to, again, it's all that social media targeting, being able to deliver a product. A lot of companies, the partnerships. We have a tea company that was able to start delivering to the door. Now you got to figure out the trucking routes, but they worked. Somebody out on the East End is in the fishing business, and they turned the fish business into finished product fish, and then they were delivering it to all the homes out in the North Fork or down in the Hamptons. And so what he did is he just took the business to the next level and started a delivery business, and that should sustain itself, local fishing. So it just really, you got to keep moving, and anybody that thought of any kind of ideas or any ways to be out there and really deliver their product is benefiting from it now.
Right. That was a leading question because I love those startup companies in the food and beverage space. So you answered it
Absolutely.
the way that I wanted you to. And look, a lot of those companies are relatively progressive, nimble. They were able to pivot more easily. Plus, they are more likely to have business plans that involved online presence, delivery, the kind of things that were not so hurt when people had to quarantine and had to do more things from home, and they were not going to storefronts. A lot of these companies don't have storefronts. They're figuring out how to do it in their kitchens, and they were able to continue to do that. In fact, continue to work on a model that works in an environment like this, and refine it. So I've seen a lot of the emerging companies in this space do quite well.
The interesting thing is they have less overhead because they may not have employees, so they're able to pivot and work through this. But on the downside, we had just a recent call on the Food Council, and they were telling us that, oh, you don't have any employees because you're a startup company. Oh, you can't get any of this loan money. So it
Right.
was a two-edged sword there.
Yeah, I didn't say it was all good. I said it was going well for some of them. Well, thanks, Mark. We had a couple questions that were submitted online, and I thought that I would ask those. Actually, one was more legal, so I'll take the opportunity to answer that. It was a question about somebody who has an online presence, and how do you protect yourself in this case when this particular entrepreneur conducts cooking classes online. To ensure that somebody slips off top of their finger, or eats an ingredient that they are knowingly allergic to, how you protect yourselves. I think that the best way for me to answer that is twofold. One, an ounce of prevention, right? I mean, you have to have the disclosures out there. You have to have the information, make sure people are aware. But we also recognize that people not always read the information that you give to them. So there's clear availability for people to, click. Did you read this? Here are the ingredients, here are the warnings, here are the disclaimers, very easily done online. So I think it's probably worth the investment to protect yourself against liability. If you do set up some sort of system where if somebody is taking a cooking class from you, they are consenting, and there are some disclaimers, and people are insured are required to read them in order to attend the class. So I think there are various things you can do to help yourself there. And then the last question, Michael, really one for you. After the COVID situation calms, which we hope is sooner rather than later, do you expect to see a reduction in the retail channel? We talked a little bit about that, but maybe you could address it more directly.
I actually think we're going to see a spike. I think you're going to see a lot of pent-up demand. I think people are going to get out there. We've got a couple of our members that are actually looking for space to be able to get into retail and to be able to do something now. It's a good time to do it, I think. But like with everything else, a real leveling off will happen when back when all the grants are done, when all the PPP money's done, when all that's finished, and you got to conduct business in a regular way, you'll start seeing a balancing, I think, come next, probably fall or winter time, when things slow down, when business usually slows down. So you have to have a good business model going into it. And I think, but I do look positively on to the summer months and, late spring into summer, where you'll see a lot of openings and a lot of things happening as we do open up in general. So retail wise should pick up at least in the near term, but there will be a leveling off and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, you can probably expect a quick bounce back, and then it's just going to be a function of that consumer confidence, because people will get a little bit out of the system. Will it have lasting effect? Well, it depends upon how comfortable people feel, being out there, being at restaurants, going to bars, and I think we're a ways away from that. So it remains to be seen. But I agree with you 100%. People are not ready to give up that part of their lives, because the social aspect, getting out of the house, something that's never going to completely go away. So, hopefully as we turn the page on this, people will feel more comfortable. Eventually they will, and will get out, enjoy themselves, and kind of shed this, this COVID gloom that's been hovering over us for such a long time.